You know him as being one of the most iconic characters in D&D, a suave, calculating, and very powerful being within the D&D universe. No, not him. Asmodius, Lord of Lies, Lord of the Nine, Dark Lord of Nessus, Prince of Evil, Old Hoof and Horn. This King of Devils has been around since the first edition of D&D, but has he always been the Asmodeus we see in 5th edition today? Today we answer that question in Forgotten Lore, where we go over each edition of D&D to see how characters have changed throughout the time. First edition sets up Asmodeus pretty well. Asmodius, Archfiend, the overlord of all the Dukes of Hell, rules by might and wit. He is physically stronger than any other devil, as strong as a storm giant, and the most cunning and artful. His mighty palace rests upon the floor of the lowest rift in Hell's 9th plane. His servitors are pit fiends and whichever of the other lesser and greater devils he commands to service. Once per year he can command the archdevils to attend his court and pay homage. Asmodius has a glowing rod of pure ruby. It acts as a rod of absorption. It also causes serious wounds on anyone touched by its opaline tip. Upon command, it will shoot forth a cone of frost, a jet of acid, or a bolt of lightning, all according to the appropriate dragon breath weapon. Value of this instrument is 1,000,000 gold pieces, considering the gem qualities only. As a side note, it mentions there can be no question that Asmodeus is the most handsome of all devils, as well as being the strongest and most cunning. The ultimate evil he represents can be seen in his beauty only when he so wills or if he forgets himself and flies into a rage. As mentioned in 1st edition, Asmodeus is an archfiend. He's overlord of all of the 9 hells, yet he is not a god, nor is he featured in Deities and Demigods, a 1st edition book, being written off as a lesser deity with few to no worshippers in the world. 1st edition really sets the scene for Asmodeus and really establishes his presence as a force in the hells. It also sets up his infamous ruby rod as something to be taken very seriously. Then, 2nd edition, the Dark Ages of D&D. No demons, no devils, no Asmodeus. Due to a strong movement in the mid-80s, D&D was heavily associated with devil worship and other immoral acts. We all know this to be true, but with the backlash that D&D got, they scrubbed all mention of demons and devils, including our Asmodeus, from all of their books. Sometimes I wish that these anti-devil groups would just let us summon devils in peace in our basements. Would Asmodeus ever make a return to D&D? 3rd edition. Regarded as one of the best D&D editions, 3rd edition and 3.5e came back strong with extended rules, lores, and, of course, demon summoning. One of my favorite books to ever come out, the Book of Vile Darkness, fully detailed Asmodeus and his followers. It elaborates on what 1st edition had already set out, as Asmodeus was the overlord and undisputed master of all 9 layers of hell. Even deities paid Asmodeus homage and respect. It was set up in this edition that Asmodeus is the oldest being in hell, but it's speculated that he was not the plane's first ruler. 3rd edition also brought us the Reckoning, in which Asmodeus showed that he could take on virtually all the other archdevils in hell and arise triumphant when the smoke cleared. His will alone dictates who rules the and they still pay homage to him every year by gathering on his lair. 3rd edition goes into more detail about exactly how this archdevil is handsome, describing him with lustrous dark skin and dark hair, and handsome in the same way that a thunderstorm is beautiful. His red eyes shine with the power of hell, and his head is crowned with a pair of small dark red horns. And of course, he is never seen without his ruby rod, an ornate piece of unparalleled jewelry. This edition also establishes a lot of his goals, talking about how he wants to remain the supreme ruler of hell, and he is also dedicated to the general spread of evil throughout the multiverse. He opposes both celestials as well as demonic forces of the abyss, as their existence is a challenge to his mastery of evil. This edition also establishes that he has many more followers, even with clerics being dedicated to him. They really flesh out the lore in this edition, talking about him establishing a court system, freezing a dude in ice, and the Blood War. As previously mentioned, he hates demons and battles them incessantly. A bloody stalemate where no demon wants to dedicate too many of their forces to the war, but know they have to fight back against the Abyss. The Abyss, the most chaotic force in all of the universe, is rivaled only by the devils in sheer evilness, and they wage war with the devils on Avernus, but they too are prone to infighting and can never consolidate their forces well enough to breach the stalemate, resulting in an endless blood war. Suave, good-looking, Archdevil, powerful, all words that describe Asmodius. One that does not, God, as he is still not a god in 3rd edition. 4th edition D&D, the edition everyone loves and talks about a lot. As much as people ignore or insult 4E, I think that the lore is some of the best lore between any of the editions. Maybe I'm biased because although it took 4 editions, 4th edition finally lists Asmodius as a deity, and a greater deity at that. And we finally get an origin instead of just speculation like in 3rd. It is said, the greatest of these infernal lords is the god Asmodius, Prince of Nessus, the 9th hell. Long ago, Asmodius was a powerful divine servant who chose to rebel against the god he served. At the head of an army of like-minded creatures, Asmodius slew his divine master. For their betrayal, he and his followers were cursed with monstrous forms and imprisoned within the fuming ruin of the murdered god's dominion. There's also a lot in 4th edition about the spell plague that you can read about, where Asmodius finally became a god. A being named Tharizdun was imprisoned for bringing the shard of evil and creating the abyss, guarded by an angelic paragon of chastity and virtue called Asmodius. Asmodius was plied with flattery and lamented that the gods had chosen to repay Asmodius' loyalty with an eternity of service at a thankless task. A seed of vanity and false pride began to grow within Asmodius, fanned to a spark of arrogance. Soon believing he was more righteous than the deity to whom he had sworn allegiance, Asmodius began to hear the whispers of the shard of evil at the abyss's heart. Abandoning his duty to guard the chained god, he sought out and found the shard in the abyss's incalculable depths. Asmodius stole away a sliver of the shard, forging it into a ruby-tipped rod of incredible power. Armed with his scepter of absolute evil, Asmodius led an invasion of the astral sea in which his divine master was slain. The victory was short-lived, however, and Asmodius and his infernal army were imprisoned in the dominion of his former master. But the fallen angel's hunger for power was all-consuming. Millennia later, Asmodius had become a deity in his own right, but still he hungered to return the heart of the abyss and steal an even more powerful fragment of the shard. So finally we get an awesome backstory from Asmodius and an origin to his ruby-tipped rod of incredible power. Also, Asmodius takes a step back from the blood war in this edition, as an unexpected truce formed between the two bloodied sides. Finally, present day. Asmodius in 5th edition. His story has only gotten better through each edition. Surely 5th edition was the one to finally cap it off and give Asmodius a good end to his story. He'd been a celestial angel, fallen from grace, stolen a shard of the abyss, forged one of the greatest weapons this world has ever seen, started and won wars, became the archdevil of hell, and fought to a stalemate against the most powerful force in the entire universe. How would this story end? Well, he actually got his ruby rod from a trial that lasted months of angel after angel testifying against Asmodius, only in the end for the Judge Primus to decline a definitive judgment. Then he ordered Asmodius to forever carry the ruby rod that would guarantee his adherence to law. He's also not listed as a god in the player's handbook. Well, here's hoping to 6th edition.